We're going to go very quickly through literature and understand why it is important to correct not only your presbyopia problem, but your astigmatism as well. I found this article, which is probably the largest study, a systematic review on the global prevalence and economic humanistic burden of astigmatism in cataract patients. So they basically looked at the pre-existing astigmatism of the cataract patients. You'll see that the literature search for Embase and Cochrane and everything found 3,600 plus citations, and they reviewed the 31 articles from 32 publications. And this is what they saw. Your pre-existing astigmatism for your cataract patients range all the way to 47% in some studies from China. And these are different countries, Italy, the UK, Denmark, all the way down. And the lowest, apparently, pre-op astigmatism is somewhere at 23%. Out of all those patients, and normally when we do have astigmatism, you normally say, oh, it's not that important to the patient, or maybe it's not that high, so I don't have to correct it. But if any of you here have astigmatism, you will realize if it's not on your spectacles, you're not very happy. And yet we tell our cataract patients, well, you can just do without it and maybe wear glasses again after surgery. So here we have they divided it into mild, moderate, and significant, and you'll see how high the percentages are. And it is quite significant because they considered mild as a 1.5 diopter. I think we all try to aim for something that's 0.5 diopter or less. So if they do have anything above that, we should be correcting them. And yet a lot of the time we don't. So we talk about this whole afternoon about spectacle independence or getting your patients happy without anything, no need for spectacles after surgery. And here are several studies on that in this review. At 1 month post-surgery, spectacle independence for those who had relatively higher patients receiving toric IOLs, 97% of patients compared to those who just received a spherical IOL, and that's about 50% of the patients. At a 6-month follow-up, 24% of patients with toric IOLs still required some type of glasses, but it was as high as 64% for the spherical IOL group. So that's a very large difference. Again, another study on RCT, pre-surgery, 85% of patients with toric IOLs, and 80% of patients underwent some corneal relaxing incisions. At 3 months post-op, 15% of those toric IOL patients required distance vision correction compared to 3 times as much for the spherical IOL. So that's a huge difference. It goes on here with other studies, and you'll see that all of them are statistically significant. That putting in a toric IOL to correct your astigmatism at the time of surgery actually results in better quality of life and a better, happier patient who's basically a spectacle independent patient. Now, what's interesting is the high prevalence of the pre-existing astigmatism in cataract patients actually also produces an economic burden because post-operatively, they will still continue to see their eye doctors or their optometrists. And if you say that they're retired anyway, well, there's someone who's going to have to take them there. So there's also a drop in your labor force for a certain number of times and certain number of follow-ups. When they checked what this economic burden would result in, they found out that spectacles over the rest of the lifetime of your cataract patients who just received spherical IOLs is anywhere from $2,151 to $3,440 in the US and $1,786 to $4,629 over the rest of their lifetime. This is in dollars in post-operative corrective spectacles. So if you look back, if you had given them the toric IOL, they would have spent less. And yet every time we talk about premium IOLs, we tell our patients, well, you're going to spend a lot more, just wear glasses. You actually are dooming them to more expenses rather than getting the correct grade for them. I think we're all familiar with the structure by now of the Lentis IOLs. It's very unique, and we've shown this in previous talks. And you can see the range here. See the range of the toric IOLs. The sphere will go from 0 to 36, and the cylinder from 0.5 diopter to 1,000, 10 diopters of correction. So you can't even say that, oh, your toric problem is too high for the implantation. So that's the usual normal IOLs you're thinking of. But Lentis is allowing us, Teleon is allowing us all these probabilities for the patients. And these are the studies done by a lot of authors who have been using the Lentis platform. But I'd like to share with you a series of patients that I've done over the past pandemic era here, when none of us could see each other in person. And here was the purpose of my review. I wanted to find out if you have patients who are presbyopic, extremely high errors of refraction, and they want to be spectacle-free, finally, whether it's a clear lens exchange or they have cataracts. Then you have to now find a presbyopia-correcting IOL as an option, but there are no readily available IOL powers for them, and hence you need customization. So I reviewed my patients from 2019 to 2022, did our regular cataract workups. And when you're trying to find out now what to do exactly for your toric patients, you go to teleon-toric.com and you will see this form. You have all your data, so you just punch it in. You enter your name, patient, etc., and the kind of IOL that you want. If you want it for nearer vision, you can have the M+ toric, or M+ X toric, or if you want something for a mix and match for maybe an extended depth of focus for them, you can go down to a 20 or a 15. After you punch it all in, you can have the option of violet light filter, and you can even have a standby option for your implantation. In our country, it takes about 3 weeks in the Philippines to get in. So I just tell my patients, if you're seriously considering this, then I'll start ordering it and getting it along the way. They also know that ready-made IOLs, or the ones readily in stock, are not going to be good enough for them, so they're willing to wait a lot of the time. So most of the cases were either done by phacoemulsification or FLACS. And here's the profile of the patient data. So I'd like you to take a look at the degree, the degree of pre-op refraction here. We're talking about 925, 950, 1450, 1175. And then there's just really one off-the-chart patient who's hyperopic of 1050. And all his life, since he was 20, he was the subject of so many conferences in so many departments, and everybody said, we can't do anything for you. Right? So he's now 62, and she's still being told nothing can be done. Your power is just so out of the way, we can't do anything for you. So about half these patients had some amount of cataract. The other half decided for clear lens exchange, and that's because, like, for example, patient ED there had, 1,600, here, had practically 2,000 worth or 20 diopters worth of a spherical problem, and he was just willing to have a clear lens just to get better all his life. In fact, he said he went through high school not really seeing anything, but his father kept donating to the school, so he kept passing, but he couldn't see anything. Funny story for him. Anyway, the table 2 here will show your post-operative results. Now, I just put the post-operative spherical equivalent because you saw the degree of cylinder correction that I needed. And even if you convert that spherically, you would end up with a much higher spherical equivalent than this, right? Because they had cylinders of 600. That should be maybe 300 if I didn't correct it properly. And here you have very good uncorrected visual acuity, both for distance and even near. Okay. Now, there's something else I have to tell you because you see these numbers seem to be a bit high, average of 100 nearsightedness. The 300, a patient informed, this is the guy with the 2,000 grade, and the myopia could really not go down. It was like 0 was the lowest grade possible. I told him he might need glasses for this, but he was so happy. He said, I've never seen, this is the guy who went through high school passing without seeing a thing. He said, I've never seen as clearly as this, so he didn't mind the minus 300 at all. Now, something I have to tell you about this, because once you start using Teleon type lenses, a lot of people will do an autorefraction right after, and they'll say, oh, I think I missed it. Why is my patient 150 myopic? And yet you see the uncorrected acuity is still practically 20/20. The reason for that has been established, and it's actually a study on autorefraction versus manifest refraction. It actually finds, and you'll see it here, the AR and MR, there's about a minus 1.28 that you will see because they did the study and they find, okay, that actually there is a pseudomyopia produced. because remember that it's a bisegmental lens. So the AR was not meant to find out if it's a bisegmental lens. So it gets a grade on the top and on the bottom, and roughly the difference between the two, let's say it's a minus 250 from the top side of the segment to the bottom side, and it gets half of that. So you get the minus 125. So the results I just showed you means that the spherical equivalent actually ended up very close to plano. So it's just an AR problem that you see a minus 125. Okay, this is just one patient where I always used to tell, I told all my patients that, you have a plate haptic, like a lens is there, it's never going to spin. I've never seen any IOL spin after I put it, it's toric lens, it's fine. So I saw her post-op, looked fine. On her left eye, however, here's the post-op refraction, and I put in a 400 and it's still there, right? So, okay, I dilated, and this should be at 94 degrees. So it did spin. So now I always tell my patients, I never say never again. So it did spin, had to go back in. And about 2 days post-op, I saw her and it's gone down. Still some swelling, but it's down to minus roughly 0.87 or minus 1. And that still went down a few weeks later. There's a small but significant population of patients with very high myopia, hyperopia, and astigmatism who have been visually disabled, literally, for the majority of their lives and have been told that not much can be done to alleviate their condition. Refractive lens exchange is often possible, but the extreme powers needed to preclude the procedure from being done. So Teleon Lentis M Plus presbyopia correcting IOLs in the toric configuration as well offer these patients the option of customization of their implants with excellent and very reliable optical results. Thank you.